In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the OpenAI API to better automate different processes in your company. So this is going to be like a basic video for you to get an understanding. I know this is probably like a bit complex for people who have a business and maybe want to automate some things, but are not quite familiar with like coding in general, and especially how APIs work, and especially how these how OpenAI APIs work especially. So I'm going to explain it to you right here, right now, in a concise of a way as I possibly can, because I know your time is valuable. So you probably all know this. This is ChatGPT. You can ask it some question like, what is 3 plus 4? And it's going to give you an answer. And now the thing is that this is very useful for your like daily tasks that you would use as a human. But sometimes it is very valuable to have these things automated, especially when, for example, having automated systems, like, for example, where emails come in and they automatically get sorted by relevance. So you could, for example, right now I could input an email and ask, how important is this to my company, considering my company is this, and at this stage, etc. But this is, of course, very annoying because I have to go personally and type this in here every time. But what you can do instead is actually do this with an API and have everything automated, where if an email comes in, you automatically get this put into a spreadsheet, and ChatGPT automatically gives you a score from 1 to 10, for example. And maybe if the score is like 8, 9, or 10, you automatically get a Slack message like, this is really important. Or if it's like 1 or 2, it's just get discarded immediately. Things like that. It's really helpful to keep stress off of you and automate different tasks. So how does an API work in general? So you don't have to be a genius to understand this. It's quite simple. You are just, in this example, you are the client, or the automated system that you set up is the client. And it's just going to send a request through the internet directly to some server, and then the server is going to return something. So actually every website more or less is an API, because you send a GET request. So for example, if you go to google.com, you basically send a request, or the browser sends a request asking Google, well, what should I show the user? And then the Google sends back, well, show them this HTML file, for example. This more specifically, though, is not about any HTML or anything. This is about just data. So what this might look like is an email API, where you can, for example, ask, give me my latest 10 emails, and then it gives you back your latest 10 emails. So there's a lot of different APIs for various things, but we are going to today focus on the OpenAI GPT API and how you can use that effectively. So what we need to do is, firstly, we need an authorization key, because obviously the OpenAI API costs some money. It's quite cheap, but it still costs some money. And that way they want to know like who made this call, so that they can charge you effectively. It's very cheap. It's like, for effectively, like, every page costs you, I think it's 5 pages, 1 cent. So 1 cent for 5 pages written. It's about that. But right now I'm going to show you how you get started on this. So firstly, you have to go to openai.com, click on the Get Started, and then you have to create an account. You probably already have an account, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to use ChatGPT. But let's say you didn't have an account, you can put your email here, set continue, put in a password, and then you also have to give your phone number, and they will send you a code. But I expect that you can do this. It's not too complicated. Then afterwards, log in. I, for one, have a rather complicated 2-factor authentication. And I would advise you to do the same. I think you actually have to do it once you use the API. So if you want to set that up, just search the app. Search the app Google Authenticator. And right there you get like very short-term codes that get regenerated every 10 seconds. And then you have to open the app and scan a code. Like, it's very, you will understand it. But yeah. So right now you're here, and what you will have to do is go to the API. And then might be a bit overwhelming, but just stay put. You'll have to create probably a organization, or maybe you've already done that. This is very easy. I think you just have to put in the name. And then you go here and you go on View API Keys. Now right here, this is my actual key that I am using for all my automation tasks and all the business I'm actually doing with my company. But I'm going to create a new one here, just so you can see how it looks like. So you probably don't have one here, so you click on Create New Secret Key. I'm just going to call it Test Key. And then, right, you can copy this right here. Make sure to copy it now because you won't be able to see it ever again. Don't try to use mine. I will delete it afterwards. That's what you can also do. Every once in a while you can just delete it, get a new one. It's very useful. Right, and now I'm going to explain to you some basic concepts of how this would work. So this is a coding interface, and I've put a link down below in the description, the first link. Just click on this and you will get this open. So what we have to do here is, first of all, we need a package. A package is something that basically builds on top of this programming language. So this programming language is Python, and a package builds on top of that, which just enables you to do more things. So you need to do !pip install OpenAI. And you run this cell by clicking here on the play. Now, don't get confused by this as well. This is just so that you basically download this package. And then once you have that installed, what you can do now is create a new code block right here. And then now this is where we get to coding. So firstly, you have to import this this OpenAI thing that we just made. So this OpenAI package. And now there's a few important things. So what you need always is you need to have sent the API key. You need to send the conversation that has been had, or the messages, and which model you want to use. So first of all, we have to define that the OpenAI.API key underscore key is equal to in quotations this long string of text. This has to be in quotes because it is a string. And now we have to define the messages. So you need to define API key, the messages, and the model that we want to use. So let's say messages. It's just going to be a variable. You can name this anything you want. But this is going to be, how this works is that maybe I'll explain this on the playground. You can actually go look this up. This is the OpenAI Playground, which is an even more simple way for you to use the API. I mean, this is of course just for like testing purposes. You can't actually integrate anything of this, but just for you understanding. So how this really works is that you have multiple different messages, and the first one is most of the time a system message. And what the system message does is that it really tells the chatbot how to act, or what persona to act with, or etc. So if you want to, so the back and forth, the talking back and forth happens between the user and the assistant. So the assistant is always the bot. So always if the bot answers something, it's always going to be as an assistant. And if a user talks to the bot, it's always going to be a user. But the system basically tells it what kind of thing to do. So for example, you could say, your job is to decide rather an email is important enough to get immediate attention by the let's say by the CEO, something. And then of course right here you would obviously put more information. So you, for example, like tell the bot like how big is your company, how, like, just so it understands more of the question. But this is just a basic example. And then in the user you would put the actual email. So I can put in some email. Hey Tom, thanks so much for the, I don't know, reply, whatever. This is not really an important email. So I just want to show that this is not important. And then right here you can send the submit. and then it will generate a new message. Right. So as you can see here, it did not understand what it's supposed to do. This can happen, and what you need to do here is write a better prompt, of course, because it obviously thought that it has to write the response email or something. So we'll have to work on the prompt again. So your job is to decide whether an email is important enough to get immediate attention from the CEO. Write important or unimportant. Then write something like, these are the only legitimate responses you are allowed to give. And this leads to the bot now probably getting a better understanding of what it's supposed to do. Let's see. Unimportant. So now it gets it. But it's really important that you get a feel for the system message, which tells about what to do. Then the user message, which can most of the time be a user that's actually talking to a bot, or be some data to be evaluated. Like right here, this is not a conversation, but still you would put the email itself that is to be evaluated. So the thing that changes, you would put that in the user message, right? You could put in the system message, but that's not how most people do it. It's not how you're supposed to do it. That doesn't give best results. So this works very well now. And so now let's get an understanding of how this would work. So the messages is a list. So these what's it called? Brackets? I think it's called brackets. This is a list. So this is a list of different things. So, and in this list we put all the different messages. So each message, of course, has content, which is going to be what is said in the message. So I could, for example, right here, take this and put it into here. Well, not like this. I'll use triple quotation marks so that the line break is still in the, so even if it does a line break, it's still the same string. But then also, it doesn't only need the content, it also needs to know what role this is. So, for example, here, I'm going to say role, and the role is system. Now, how this setup is, I have to admit, it is a bit complex and a bit weird to understand. But this is a list of different messages, and in each message, each message is what's called a JSON or dictionary, where there's always something like a key, and then there's some value associated to that. So the key here is role. So what you can later on say, message dot role, and then the return is going to be system in this case. And so they have and for this you always need the role and the content. Later on there's going to be some function calling as well, which needs some different things as well, but right now it's very basic. It's just you have the role and you have the content, and the role is either system, user, or assistant. So right here, this is all the messages we need for, oh no, it actually isn't. So and you also need to comma separate these. So this role and then comma content. And now for the second thing, actually we need to make a comma back here and define the next message, because we actually have more than one message. And the role here is actually the user, and the content is this email. Let's see, let me grab the email that I've written, the perfect email. Now this, of course, I have to change the lines. This is like the very basics of how you will get started with the APIs. And later on, I'm going to do some videos. This might not seem impressive right now, but you need this basic understanding to later on be able to automate a lot of different tasks, because there can be so much automation lately. I've been working with some companies and I've been automating so much time away, and I just want to share this so you can use this in your company as well. So now this is where the magic happens. So we now have the API key and we have the message, and the model is, I'm just going to write that right into the function. But right now we need to say OpenAI dot chat completion actually dot create, and this is where the magic happens. So right here you will have to put in the model, which is equal to, for me, I'm just going to use GPT-4. You can also say GPT-3.5 turbo, which is about, like, GPT-4 is about 15 times, or I think 20 times as expensive, but also like way more intelligent. So you can choose either one. Usually you're going to use GPT 3.5 turbo because most of the things are not as complicated, but if there's like a really, if there's a task where intelligence and like understanding is really important, then you use GPT-4. And now messages, so we have the model equals to this, and the messages equal to the messages. We defined this up here. So the messages is this stuff here, this list of different messages. And now we need to capture whatever comes back here. So this is the API call, right? So this calls the API. This is a Python very easy way of calling an API, and we'll get into how to do completely like terminal-based API calls later. But this is just very simple, so you get an understanding of this. So we're going to say response. Again, this can be any name. It's just I need to save it somewhere. So now whatever this API call returns is going to be saved in the response. And now you can just go and print this response just to see what it looks like. Now let's run this. And this is what we get back. So we get a lot of gibberish. And what the fuck does this mean? Well, the actual only important thing is right here. So this is the message. And it's a bit complicated why it is in this weird sort of JSON. But this, for example, this is a JSON. This is very typical of an API to return. It's also very typical that an API returns a lot of gibberish. Usually a lot more than this. A lot of things that you don't need, because maybe you need it and then it's nice that it is there. So right now we can see that there's so much like what is actually the thing that we need, and we can see the thing that we need is actually in choices. Then choices is a list, because there is a way to get multiple different choices at the same time. So you will have to say that is actually the first choice. So the message, to extract the message from this, is actually going to be, it's equal to response. And then right here, the choices. So you will use the brackets and then quotation choices. Then it's going to be the number 1, which in coding is a number 0. So you start counting at 0. Don't ask me why. And then with this, you will get, and then right here we need the message. So this is going to be the actual message, right? So if we were to now print here, right now, print the message, right? Not the messages, it's actually a different variable. There's an S here. And we print this, then we see, okay, this seems like what we should actually get back. And we'll just role assistant, content, unimportant. So to figure that this would be unimportant. Great. So now, of course, to only get the content itself, what you could do is in these brackets, you could put in content. I'm not going to do this here, but just to get this basic understanding here. And now what's very typical usually is that you would say messages. If this were like a conversation, then you would do messages.append, which means, because messages is this list of different messages, and append just means adding a new one. And then you would append the message. This will be very commonplace if this would be an actual chatbot, but for us, obviously, this is just an evaluation bot at the moment. So now that we have this, what we could, for example, do is some if statements that would say if message of content, so from the content from the message is equal to double equal unimportant, then or let's actually do nothing. So actually, if it is equal to important, then use another API, use the Slack API to send a message directly to the CEO. So this is how you integrate different APIs. And of course, this is not quite how you would use it as a non-coder, because you would use like low code and no code tools to do the same thing. And I'm going to tell you how to do this exactly on Zapier in another video. But for now, I just want you guys to get this understanding of how these APIs work. How there's always, you're going to send something with a bunch of data. You're going to send a request with a bunch of data, like an API key, like some messages, like what you want exactly, etc. You send all this data, and then you get a JSON back. Like JSON is just a way to like have data. So you get a bunch of data back, and then you can use that to further work in this automation, right? So this is how you would do it. And then you can go to this playground thing to play around with it. And you have to really understand it's a bit different than talking to ChatGPT, because in ChatGPT it just goes on and on. But for example, here I would be able to just write something for the assistant. And this is often also used where you have a system message that tells you like do this, and then you actually have one user message and one assistant as an example. So you would, for example, have this. You can have this exactly like this, and now do the actual email. So now that GPT now sees this, okay, I'm supposed to do this, and before to this, I said this. So it will keep doing the type of behavior it did before. Of course, it doesn't know that itself actually didn't do that. I actually did that. It doesn't know, which is very funny to me. But yeah, so this is a quick trick for you guys. Alright, so I hope you liked this video. I would love for you guys to comment down below what type of thing takes a lot of time in your company. And then I will, depending on what kind of comments I get, I will show different automations for different sort of things. So, I mean, I right now here teased an automation for email where you can actually connect a lot of email accounts, and you will only get a direct Slack message if there's really an important one. If you're interested in that, or if you're interested in anything else, just write down like what type of thing you're struggling with, and I will make my videos depending on the type of comments you give. Alright, thank you so much. See you later.